You may have heard that this week the rather notable American author Cormac McCarthy passed away at the age of 89. Got announced through his publisher, I believe. I'm not a die-hard Cormac McCarthy fan, but he is one of the few authors I've actually read multiple books by and plan to read more from, which is a high bar to clear with me. Now, um, long life, he's written a lot of books. Personally, I've had experience with two books, and I'm making this video right now because I'm just kind of assuming anyone in the book reading, booktube, Twitter, all that, people who are in the area of finding videos like this, have probably been inundated with people talking about Cormac McCarthy again. So I just want to give some thoughts on my experience with the books. Like I said, I'm not a biographer on the guy. I really can't tell you much about him. I've only read two books, and arguably his most famous books, maybe. I read Blood Meridian last year, and I read The Road earlier this year. Could not have had more different experiences within the same author. That's really the reason I haven't read a third book by him yet. Blood Meridian is a 10 out of 10 book, but it's the kind of book that I really struggle to actually recommend to anyone. It is not a beginner-friendly book. I do believe that as people get into reading, there is a obvious progression that they're going to go from more accessible, more escapism and romance and lowbrow, exciting, suspense stuff. And the more of that you consume, readers will naturally develop towards more difficult to consume books that have more reward for reading them. I think Blood Meridian is a great example of that. It can be really slow. It can be really tough just to get through the absolute gore and violence going on. This is based on a true story of an actual group called the Glanton Gang, which went and massacred and marauded their way through Mexico shortly after the American-Mexico War, long time ago in American history. It portrays Mexico as hell on earth, and it is very clearly a hell of their own making. They are fully engaged with the reason that the desert is terrible and murderous, and everyone's killing each other, and everyone's drinking, and every crime imaginable, murdering civilians to scalp them to sell to the government so they can get blackmail them for more money to buy booze with, to shoot up towns and so on. And it is this absolute descent into hell and depravity and the clutches of the devil. And I think it's one of the best books I've ever read. I just don't necessarily recommend it to people. It's the kind of book where you're probably going to read it at some point if you're ever going to read it, and you don't need somebody to tell you that, oh, you should definitely get to it. You'll just naturally gravitate towards it because, yeah, it probably is one of the best Westerns you're ever going to read. I'm not a big Western reader. I encourage everyone to throw down in the comments a suggestion for what a better Western novel is. I always like recommendations. That said, the other book, The Road, I recommend it even less, to be honest. It very much tried to be literary and to approach an idea of struggling to keep hope in a world where all hope has been lost. It's filled with despair and questioning God and fear and this very strained, very damaged relationship between a father and a son as they try to survive this comically destructive apocalypse event. I personally think it's a great example of these tones, or the tone of the book, the themes that he's going for, probably shouldn't have been put into basically a science fiction setting. When I was reading it, partly because the prose difficulty went from on a collegiate graduate level to middle grade. I would genuinely say The Road's actual difficulty of vocabulary you could give to a middle schooler, depending on your opinion of public education, of course. The actual writing bored me heavily And it is a very stark example of why a story needs a plot. And it, it's hard to describe to someone who hasn't read the book, but because there are literally no milestones of progression, you really don't know how far they're going to get or why they're going to get any farther. They're just, the two of them are traveling south and starving. You never know if they're going to run out of food or if they're going to luckily find more supplies. They don't either. And Cormac McCarthy obviously would have said that's the point. But on the other hand, the only reason you know that the book is going somewhere is because you're physically getting to the back cover. That's the only thing that tells you that you're actually getting through the book and there's some resolution coming. Because it's really just one despairing event after the next, lined up again and again and again and again and again and again and again for 290 pages. And when you have a story structured like that without real plot, there's just this tension of, does the son still trust the father? Is the father doing what's best for the son? Are they going to live? Whatever. This emotional tension between the two of them and the fear and the despair of living in this apocalyptic world. But like these scenes that are filling the book, you could delete any of them, shorten the book by 50 pages, and the reader wouldn't notice. There's no reason for this book to be 300 pages long, except that's what he decided to do. Probably because his publisher said so. He probably got told, hey, we're looking for another book of this size because, you know, that's where our break-evens are. It looks meaty, it markets well or something. Because there's really no reason for the book to be that particular size. There's no plot to it at all. I thoroughly did not enjoy The Road. I perhaps would enjoy the movie. This might be a great example of really strong acting and cinematography can replace what was very weak prose. Because, you know, that when you talk about an adaptation between taking a book to a movie, the ability to shoot the scene and make the scene look pretty is equivalent to the author's ability to describe the world well and with linguistic flourish. And I read The Road after I read Blood Meridian, so I went in knowing what he was capable of doing, because in Blood Meridian you get these immense, despairing, almost scary and desolate descriptions of all the different types of desert encountered on this journey from Texas out to California and back through the Great Plains and all that. And in Blood Meridian he's like showing off, and it's astounding as another writer to look at what is capable in the English language. And then there's The Road, which if a high schooler wrote that as a sample for English class that they dashed out the night before, like, I'd believe it. There are some passages where describing this horrible gray world gets a little pretty, but none of it stuck with me because it's just a boring book. And I want to stress that it's boring explicitly because of the length. So take that as you will. Maybe stick to the movie. Maybe stick Blood Meridian as something you'll get to in the future and in your reading career, as you will. But if someone has a recommendation for a third book that, you know, the next one that I should pick up by Cormac McCarthy, because he's clearly capable of writing really well. And I would like to see more like Blood Meridian and not like The Road, personally. So please, if you have your favorite novel that isn't one of these two by him, let me know in the comments below. And as typical, like, subscribe, tell your friends, buy my books. Stick around. I've got more book reviews coming. I want to prove that I'm going to be honest and straightforward with my book reviews. I'm never going to puff something up to try and sell you on it. If I think a book was bad, I promise I'm going to just tell you it was bad, and I'll explain why I think it was bad. And I do that because if I tell you a book is good, I really want to be believed that I have thoroughly considered that why it's good, why it's enjoyable, that it will probably be worth your time and typically your money, unless you're one of those weird people that still rents books from public librarians. Ugh. Ugh. Till then, cheers.